Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone this evening. First up, we have a motion to accept or modify the agenda.
I move that the agenda be approved as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Great, thank you. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I move that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, no. Great, thank you. Tonight, we have a short action agenda at this work session. Our first topic is going to be acceptance of grant funds. Is there anyone that plans to speak on this topic? I mean, from the public? Okay. And who? Are you?
Mr. Grant.
Thanks, Mr. Grant.
Yes. Just 1 second, I'm trying to catch up.
All right, yes. Okay. So normally, I would not be presenting this today, but for reasons of manufacturing and possibly not being able to get the items that we're wanting to order because all of the school systems are getting these grants, and we anticipate that they will go fairly quickly. So this is why we're requesting today. We just want to make sure we catch it while they're in stock. So Warren County Public Schools has been awarded $165,660.60 by the Emergency Connectivity Fund to provide Chromebooks to our students. The funds do not require a local match and must be spent on Chromebooks for the student learning, and the award will come at no cost to the county. We just need to appropriate it at the time of getting the award. So, any questions?
Is there a motion?
I move that Warren County Public Schools accepts the award from the Emergency Connectivity Fund in the amount of $165,660.60 and to request for the increase in appropriations towards the Technology Cost Center.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on this? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Next up, we have purchase of the Chromebooks. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this? Okay, Mr. Grant.
Okay, and I'm gonna pass this to Doug, so that I'm only doing one thing at a time. Yeah, you'll have to move to the next. That part's done. Yeah. Okay. So Warren County Public Schools would like to purchase Chromebooks from CDW in the amount of $165,660.60. The funding of this purchase will be provided through the Emergency Connectivity Funds Award, which you just approved, and does not require a local match. These items were bid like all of our E-rate items. They're bid through a process, and the lowest bidder was selected. The entire cost of this purchase is supported through the connectivity funds, and there's no requirement for a local match. Any questions?
Is there a motion on this?
I move that permission be given to Warren County Public Schools to purchase Chromebooks from CDW in the amount of $165,660.60, contingent upon the Board of Supervisors appropriations increase.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion on this? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Next up, we have our work session. First up is going to be a robot field painter, and it looks like that's going to be Mr. Hall and Mr. Copy.
You guys have a seat. Unless you just want. First off, I'd like to thank you guys for listening and being open-minded to what we're proposing. For us, technology has really changed in the last 2 or 3 years as far as the athletic departments of both high schools. We now do online streaming of all of our games, online tickets, and all the other technology. And what we're going to present here today is just the next step in that. Would be a huge time savings to the athletic departments of both schools to be able to do that. I think the next part it's easier to put a little YouTube video up so you can kind of see what this is, as opposed to me just trying to describe it to you, but it's basically a robot that will paint the fields for you.
Showing up on the first page of Google might not be the best for everyone.
That's in a nutshell what it would be. As you can see, basically once you program the field at each school, it would save on that tablet, and then once you start it, in theory, you could walk away from it and go do something else. And it really frees up. It mentioned on there it's like 2.5 hours to do a new college field. Now, for us right now to paint our fields the way we paint it for games, especially the first time, will take 4 or 5 hours. And then subsequently after that, it'll be a little bit less than that, but this will definitely be faster. It looks a lot better. There's no way I can paint a line that straight by hand. I've tried. We spend, and I'll let Bill's going to get into a little bit of the cost of this, but we spend a lot of money on paint. We're hoping this will help save some of that too.
Yeah, I'm going to just go over some of the logistics of it. I know the first line item there, when it says 45,000, I know that's like a shock to the system to begin with. So basically what this would do is it would be $7,500 a year, and we would split that amongst 3 people. So that would be Skyline paying $2,500, Warren County would be $2,500, and facilities would pay $2,500. So that would be, we'd be entering a partnership for 6 years is what this is for. We currently, Warren County High School, we rent basically that service to begin each school year for them to lay out the grid for our fields. And then we just kind of trace them after that. That, every time you do that, it's a $500 charge. We use Tiny Mobile Robot that comes out to paint our fields. So we've kind of seen this technology for a while. We did a demo over at Skyline so Bill could see kind of what we already experienced. We're not like new to the ballgame. We're kind of catching up to the ballgame a little bit. Clark County, a lot of the localities are using this technology now. So these are just some of the things that go along with it. Some price comparisons. So our facilities guy at Warren County, he came from Loudoun County. They used SWOSI, so that's where we got our first bid from. So that one is roughly $10,000, and that's for a 5-year deal. The second one, Turf Tank, which is kind of like your chief competitor, and that is a lot of your Division I schools use, Alabama, UVA, Virginia Tech. That is $11,000. And then Turf Tech, which is really, Turf Tech, which is not really a comparable thing. It's mounted onto like a UTV, and it drives like up. So it's not even in the same ballpark, but you had to get the comparison. So you can see where that's $49,000. Let's go ahead and hit the next one. So those are just some cost things. So then these are some things that we were talking about. We've already met with Greg Levacy, Buck Smith. We've had a couple meetings already talking about pros and cons of this, things like that. So for us, the things that we always talk about, like the biggest thing that we have on our plate is time. Like, how do you budget all your time in terms of trying to meet the needs within the building and outside the building? If it's not one of us painting, then who's that fall to? So then it's the coaches. So how do you manage those times? So time would be one thing. Obviously, the physical labor, as Bill pointed out, he's not getting any younger. So that would be one thing. But part of the beauty of this is no matter who's running the painter, it's just you set it down and it goes. So obviously you have to kind of maintenance it, but for 45 minutes, it's just paint in the field. If at some point it runs out of paint or something happens, it just stops. And then you get an alert on the tablet, I need more paint or whatever, and then you continue the process. So you can like multitask while you're doing this. For someone like Bill or myself, you could really run the fields that are beside our office. You could be doing 2 things at once if we were the one that was running the machine. He talked a little bit about, we usually spend about 6+ hours a week painting. Somebody, us, a coach, somebody like that's going to be, so that kind of like cuts that a third of the time. The interesting thing that I think if you were doing like an analysis on cost, we spend roughly $15,000 between both schools a year on paint. So if you're cutting 60% off of that, that would be $6,000 you'd be spending. So in theory, the money that you would be spending on the paint, you just redivert it into the robot. And then just some professional things we were thinking about. Always striving to be the best and look the best. This provides our professional groundskeeper the equipment needed to operate at a high level. Brandon and Potter is our guy at Warren County. And when you talk about technology and using this equipment, he lights up because obviously I think as we enjoy new equipment that allows us to do our job better, this is something that allows him to do his job better. So we just look at this as kind of like, and Bill already talked on the technology part of it. I mean, there's just always new things that are happening, social media, all those things you could add to it. This is just something new that would be added to it that allows all of us a little bit more efficient way to use our time. I think obviously there's a price tag with it, but it's kind of like where you grabbing money from one area to pay for another area. So that's kind of how we're looking at it. Anything else, Bill? I don't know, but
One of the kind of, I look at this too. I know we have a robotics club at school. I'm sure they would love to, it could be educational, I guess, is my point, as far as the kids to learn how does it work, how does the GPS work, and I'm sure that the sales, Brian, the sales would come and meet with the, he would do a demo and talk to the kids, and that could be a part of what we would be able to offer too that we can't now. The one thing we didn't mention, the machine will, not only does it do lines like that, but it can also do words. As long as it's on flat ground, if you want to put, welcome back students on the grass in front of the door, it could be done. As long as if you can program it on that tablet, and like I said, it's fairly flat ground, it'll paint it. So there's some uses of it outside of athletics also.
questions?
So this is to purchase the tiny robot and just over a 6-year payment?
6-year installments, yeah.
What's the life expectancy of that?
That's a good question. So as best we can tell, so Brian McKinney is who comes and paints our fields, and he's also a salesperson. I wasn't approached to buy one of the things. It was just one of those things like I was talking with Bill about in terms of like, this kind of makes sense with other localities, and then I started asking more questions. He does roughly 3 to 5 fields a day for 6 or 7 months, and he uses the same 2 robots, which hers are 4 or 5 years old. So I mean, I'm thinking about in terms of like wear and tear. So obviously Bill and I are going to be sharing this for 2. Well,
Well, it would be for, you could do this for softball, baseball, any soccer. So it would be used year round, not just for football only.
yes.
Yeah, when he demoed at Skyline, he did a soccer field, and it took the machine about 35 minutes to do.
35 minutes and it's done. So we've already started planning out just, how do you share that? What's it look like? Again, the grounds, the facilities that are at Warren County High School, he's kind of excited about this opportunity to use this. And again, the thing, we're in a partnership with everyone. How do we help each other out? So like if he's running the robot, maybe I'm mowing the field or something, so it's how can we help each other become better is what we're looking at. But again, when asked that question, like what's the life expectancy, he says, well, he goes, there's a pump primer is something that he's said over time you'll have to replace, but again, that's like $100 item, not a couple $1,000 item. So there's a couple things, there's some screens, some preventative things that you can do that helps prolong that. But he said, he goes, if you take care of it, he goes, like I use mine every single day for 6 months a year. He goes, mine's run the life of 15 or 20 years. And he goes, I just throw, and he drives a little Prius around and he just throws them in the back and carries them around. So again, you can't have, it's about like, so it's more substantial. There's Clark County has one that's a smaller version of it. So this is a little bit more substantial, but their fields are a little different shape than ours in terms of like how rugged it is and things like that.
So we took over the field maintenance this year, correct? Can you explain to me, you said something about it was $500. Right now, we have somebody bring one of those robots out here, and it's $500 per time, is that correct? Per field, okay. And they do that how many times?
So I just do that. Bill has his pegs already marked. So all of our fields are already programmed on that tablet. So like he just comes out. So to start, for example, football, it would be one time on the game field, one time on the practice field. There's 2 practice fields. So you're talking about $1,500. We only do it one time and then we just trace it after that. Same thing would happen in soccer season. Again, to get it square and everything, so that would be 2 times. So $1,000 in the spring. So you're like $2,500 a year that we spend.
So you're already spending your portion.
I'm already spending that portion of it.
And then you're just taking care of it yourself?
Yeah, I just put the lines down.
Okay.
Just walk it with
Well,
There's more to it than that, but
there's more to it than that. A lot of string lines, a lot of back and forth. You can spend all day on a field. And one thing you definitely want to do is make sure it looks good. And I know when I go to fields, the first thing I look at are how straight are the lines. And you'll see some of those that'll do this out there. And so I just, for me, I kind of like to see a nice looking field, the lines straight, everything's coordinated, and it's ready to play.
And this isn't like a knock on either one of us, but like, it's a challenge to line off a field at a very high level. And like Dr. Ballinger just said, like when you go to a field, and that's just kind of, I guess, as a coach, I'm kind of like, what's going on? Again, like we want to put out the best product we can. We expect high expectations of all our athletic programs. We want to also provide the best we can for that. And so it's just like a diversion of where is that money coming from our perspective.
So you're still going to be paying for the paint. So that price would still continue, and then like the
How is
2,500
it,
that
you
you're
said
paying
we would
now.
save money on paint, how are we saving money on paint?
So the robot uses 60% less paint than Bill uses spray cans, which are double the price of a 5-gallon bucket. We use 5-gallon buckets. So between both of us, we spend about $15,000. If you take 60% off of that, it'd be $9,000. We'd be spending $6,000 on paint a year. So Bill would move away from the aerosol cans, and then we would just be buying 5-gallon buckets of paint that would go into the robot.
The aerosol, gotta give you an idea. The aerosol paint that I use is about $70 a case, and to get the football field ready for a Friday night varsity game, it's 6 or 7 cases. So it's close to $500 every game just to paint the field.
So Mr. Hall, are you saying then right now, we're paying the same amount already, but just to do it once, and then you still have to use all the labor hours to redo it every single week?
Yes, ma'am. Fields get redone once a week, practice fields, it's who's gonna do it,
So it would still get done the same once a week, but it would just essentially.
The machine would do it.
The machine would do it, who's running the machine, but, our coach is doing it, or Bill and I doing it, who's gonna be running the machine, we're willing to work on that part of it.
I know for us currently, for football, the coaches do the practice fields, and there's 2 of them, and then I do the game field. So I'd like to have it so my coaches didn't have to touch paint. That's a goal, one of my goals of having this.
That is a goal of mine. There's already not enough hours in the day to do everything they have to do.
Is this new money that would need to be put into the athletic department budget, or is this something that you already can budget within? I mean, I know we're working on the upcoming budget now, but.
For me, it would come out of our gate revenue.
Same with me. We talked about different ways that you could finance it, whether you put it into where it was just a line item, and maybe Bud can speak to that specifically, or both Bill and I have said that we're comfortable taking it out of our gate receipts as well. So that either or could be a possibility for that.
Yeah, and the opportunity, I'm sorry.
Asking for more.
We're not asking for more now.
We
It's just how do you manage it?
It's a partnership between the 2 schools and the facilities management department to be able to do this. As far as with paint, in regards to your question that Mr. Hall answered, the precision of putting it down to a robot versus an aerosol can is like, it's night and day. This is almost like on your carpets at home using a vacuum cleaner versus a broom. The vacuum cleaner goes deeper, it's faster, it's smoother, it's stronger. We do have a facility person to take care of the high school, each of the high schools and those type of things. This also, it replaces that of just pure labor and time. There's plenty of stuff to mow and do to set up for a game. If this can be lining the fields while you're setting up the auxiliary things for a game at the same time is a pretty good, strong, productive way to use that. Financially, it's split over those 3 areas. It helps us in facilities simply because we can use that. You don't necessarily have to work hard, you just have to work more efficient. This is an opportunity, a way to work more efficient for the person that we have that has to take care of the entire grounds. There's robotic mowers, there's robotic everything out there. There's robotic little vacuum cleaners that run around your house and you cats chase them, at least mine do at my house. But it's but that's sort of where all this is going. And Mr. Levacy and myself, along with the 2 athletic directors, have sat down multiple times to lay this out. And it's sort of a kind of a win for all of our departments and programs, just off the labor cost. The cost itself, when you see it as one giant cost, it looks challenging. When you spread that out over 5 or 6 years, and then what you really pay for paint. I've lined a lot of fields, and if to line that football field to look as good as you want it to, or whatever fields, a football field is just the one that takes the most paint. I mean, that's almost an all-day job.
Any other questions?
So are you guys able to do the maintenance on this machine, or are we gonna have to send it to a place to have it fixed, or do we have it done where, who's doing the upkeep on it?
I think it depends on what is wrong with it. If it's the GPS, the computers and all that, we're gonna have to get the company to come and fix it. But as far as the parts that Bill was mentioning, like the primer pumps and the screens, and, you know, we can handle that.
The part of that 6-year deal would be, Brian McKinney is the dealer that we've been working with. He would handle all the training, but he would also, any issues that we have, he would be the one that would come on site if we're having issues with the tablet, things like that. All that stuff would be covered during those 6 years. Brandon and Brian were talking maintenance while they were together in terms of like, what are some of the things that are some things that you have to pay attention to. There's some things that are pretty indestructible. There are some things that you need to pay attention to whenever you're operating so it lasts a long time. And those things aren't big ticket items, they're small things. Screens for the filters of the paint, the primers and things like that. So it's not wear and tear on your pump to prime that. So just a simple primer tube like you would use to prime an engine, if you do that as opposed to making the engine primer do it on its own, that increases the longevity of the engine. And Brandon understands that already. It's like, oh yeah, we got that. That's not a problem. So again, there's a lot of pros, but when Brandon lit up as this is like, oh, this is, he ran all of Loudoun County schools with 2 SWOSIs was the model. And, you know, I was trying to get verification from him with Bill when we were getting the demo. I was like, all right, so how does this compare? And he was like, oh, this is definitely an upgrade. And he goes, the parks that they ran in Loudoun County were obviously numerous. And he says, this is a higher caliber machine that you'll get more longevity out of.
This would be a next year, next budget purchase, or this budget purchase?
There's having to be to purchase currently right now in order to take advantage of being able to use it for the spring. Plus, spring would give us some time to kind of break into using the machine before we get to football, which is a little more challenging in terms of just making sure that, especially all of Bill's fields are mapped out. My fields are currently already mapped out, but like he mapped Bill's field in a half an hour the other day when we had the demo. So, I mean, like that's already done. The next time it's just put the paint in and go.
Is that your maps that you already have will transfer because they have them, even though it's not going to be our tablet?
One of the things we haven't talked about is just, it's part of the details of this, is they want to put a satellite on top of our school that you can't really see, but it helps the precision of the lines for anything within 10 miles. So anything that would basically be in schools that we would need to use the painter, it makes it that much more precise. So that way, every single time, it's on point.
And that satellite's included in this?
It's included in this.
And it itself, the satellite's not like one of these big, huge things. It's just literally something that it just attaches to the wall so it can pick it up when it's far distance away for it to pick up the GPS to run it, to mark out the fields. If you ever get an opportunity to see this like in person, and it's incredible. I mean, it's just incredible watching this machine go out there and do all this stuff. And it's something that we feel like through schools, through our partnership and with facilities that I think in the long run with paint and labor, time and those type of things, we'll save money rather than, I mean, you're going to spend it on these type of things. Paint costs money, time, labor costs money and those type of things. But the paint wise, you know, that itself saves the majority of it.
And then a budget committee, I know we had the money held back from us. Are we good to go with this money? Like, have we been able to pay out the extra stipends yet, or are we?
Well, it sounds like they're gonna be able to pay for it, not out of the budget.
Not out of
It's
the
out of the
extra,
operating.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Is what I'm
Because,
saying.
and it sounds like we're already paying $2,500 now, so we're just gonna take that, you could take that $2,500 and put it towards this instead of paying it there, kind of a, almost a swap, like
Just
you're,
moving around,
just
moving
moving it.
around the
And
money
through some of
instead
the
of
other
extra
expenses
money.
with the paint,
Mhm.
there
Not
was
needing
aerosol
extra
cans and,
Mhm.
so.
So yeah, it sounds like it will work.
Yeah, the money's there already.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll have this as an action item for our February meeting.
And if you guys could just get the, as far as more financial, as far as what we're looking at, who we're going through, if you can get that to us, then we can prepare that for the February meeting.
And the guys have already went out and got their quotes and those type of things to meet all our procurement laws and those type of things. So they'll have a nice write-up for that. They already have.
Does Greg have all that, or?
Greg has that as well. We met a week or two ago just to go over all the final quotes to decide which one we would go off of based upon price.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, next up, we have the Right Turn Program presentation.
So this is just a follow-up to a meeting that we had earlier. I believe it was in December. You had some questions about the right turn. Buck and I was trying to do the best that we could, and so we said, hey, let's bring in the experts at a work session. So here they are.
Kyle Kuzmic, school social worker.
I'm Rachel Diarmid. I'm the school counselor at E. Wilson.
And Rachel's our counselor doing the program. I'm in charge of the program. We've been doing it at least 12 years. It's back to Pam McGinnis, if that dates it for everybody. And this was initially developed as an alternative to a mandatory expulsion policy for substance abuse on any paraphernalia or anything on school grounds was supposed to be a mandatory expulsion unless you developed an alternative program. So that's how this got started. And we've had a couple of different iterations of it with outside providers. And to be quite honest, it's a nightmare, particularly through COVID, but having them show up, be here, and do what we need to do has been difficult just to have that. So we got in touch with Rachel earlier this year, and you guys had approved that the budget piece earlier. That's how we're paying for that. But just to have somebody, frankly, in-house that we know we can trust and that's doing a good job. I've been here 22 years. Prior to that, I had done some outpatient substance abuse. I was not a certified addiction counselor, but I did court-mandated juvenile groups, the same kind of thing. I've worked in inpatient jails and things, so I'm familiar with it. Rachel's frankly done a lot of work kind of tweaking this curriculum over 10, 15 years. It gets old and stale. So she's been doing a great job of doing that, and I've just been kind of having conversations with her. But I feel really good about the program we have. And we typically get a good response. What's unique about this is it is parents and kids, and that is a hard thing to get in one room together. So we may have 8 kids and parents in this room here, and it's a unique opportunity to have those conversations about whether it's parenting or rules or anything going on in a family in a group setting with other parents that you don't get to really have in any other setting. And quite honestly, the parents are the best piece of this program because they will call each other out on things, but also have far more relevant stories and information that are real to other parents and to these kids about their uncle who died of an alcohol thing or whatever. All of those kind of family stories that come out in those conversations that are a lot more helpful than, not that Rachel's not great, but we're all listening to somebody that they don't know necessarily. So we have content, and it's a psychoeducational, it's not a treatment group, but we have content that we provide to them, and it's really a jumping off point for conversations. And it's mandatory. I tell kids, I will call you out if you don't participate. It's not a choice. And it's kept lighthearted, but their engagement back and forth is what makes it good. So the feedback's been good.
Yes, absolutely. So like you said, it's not a treatment group. So what I'm going to do moving forward, the first group that we meet, I'm going to provide a list of resources. So if they did want to seek out treatment, that is available to them. I have resources here that are local and ones that are a little bit further out if they wanted to seek treatment outside of the community. And then I can just go through a little rundown of what we're going to be doing each week. So week 1 is going to be opening up, talking about goal setting. So really learning what the difference is between long-term goals and short-term goals. And then this is something that we revisit each week and see where they're at with them. So that way they can reflect, okay, did I meet my goal for that first week? what do I need to do better? And then we also talk about truancy, the laws in the legal system related to drugs and alcohol, because a lot of the times they do have maybe charges along with it. I clearly state, though, that it's not legal advice, it's just specifically the law and what it is. And then week 2, going into more about looking at the social aspects and the environment and different aspects of their lives that really make up who they are. So then we also go into, in that same week, we talk about risk factors of possibly developing an addiction and what those specific risk factors are. And then in week 3, we go into talking about the different stages of addiction and how it's not linear. It can be looking at those different stages. And then since we had already talked about the risk factors in week 2, I go into talking about protective factors along with what it means to be resilient and how we can be resilient to overcome those risk factors that do place us at a higher risk to become addicted to a substance. And in here we also talk about parenting styles and different attachment styles. And again, connecting that back to everything that makes us who we are. So there's connecting it to parenting styles and attachment styles, make up who we are as a person. And then with week 4, we learn more about specifically the brain and how when they're still in high school, their brain is still developing until they're 25 years old, and what effect that has, substances have on the brain, and also the cycle of addiction. And then we also, in that same session, we talk about adolescent development into adulthood. So what that really looks like. And then week 5, we talk about relapse and risk factors of relapse and statistics specifically about relapse. And then in week 6, this will be the last week, we talk about family as a system and the different roles that family members take on in that system. And then at the week 6 meeting, I have a post-assessment that kind of just takes a minute to reflect and see what they learned, if there's anything they want changed, what would be helpful in the future that maybe I could change about the group for the next time. But yeah, that's pretty much a summary of the group in general.
Any questions?
There's one group going through at any 6 weeks.
Yeah, we've done it a couple different ways. Quite honestly, our administrators want us to have what's called a rolling group, so that those consequences for the kids can happen more immediately. We kind of have a back and forth about it. I've advocated for what's called a closed group, because what it allows you to do is have a cohesiveness and we're talking about fairly intimate stuff here, so there's a confidentiality. And when you've got new folks rolling in every week, that makes it hard. But if you've got one group who starts and finishes and does the whole 6 periods, there's a group bonding that happens in there that helps, quite frankly, disclosure, those kinds of things. But the downside is that it does mean if a kid gets busted at week 1, he might be 6 weeks until he has that actual class. So we've added a number of more classes, groups throughout the year to try to accommodate that. Any other questions?
What tends to be the majority of the kids that you're seeing in here? Are you seeing a lot of opiates or
Vapes.
Vape? Okay.
Yeah, vapes are a lot. Some other marijuana, but it's mostly vape. Sometimes it'll be pills that we don't know what they were or that they got out of grandma's medicine cabinet or something like that. But typically it's pretty low level stuff. Depends on the incident. We had vape detectors installed in the bathrooms a couple years ago, and that significantly increased our referral for those. So.
And when you're saying vapes, you're meaning like THC vapes?
It could be either. Could be the knock off THC, for lack of better terms, the things that kids are getting at vape stores and all of those that are synthetic. That's primarily what it is. It's not technically THC, but it's close in the family. They tweak it a little bit so it's technically legal as a air freshener, and kids are using. That's the predominant thing that we're seeing. And again, our numbers have increased significantly since those became popular the last 5 years. It's what it is. Any other questions?
Thank you both for updating us on that.
Thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry, we don't have any pool robots. That's right.
Next, we have review of IT construction proposal for LFK. Mr. Grant.
Okay, just wanted to go over this proposal so you all understood everything that was in here. What this is it is the project for the cabling for LFK. Currently, the cabling is using very, very old. It's not even Cat 5. We currently have almost all of our buildings except for LFK up to Cat 6A, which can run up to speeds up to 10 gigabytes. I know that probably doesn't make any, doesn't mean anything to you, but it makes internet fast. The cabling in there is at least 20 years old. I think Bob had said that was the first building to actually get network cabling in it. So it's running tops at 10 megabits, which is thousands of times less speed. So we're looking at this opportunity to go ahead and update all of this will affect desktops, this will affect wireless, our camera systems, anything that deals with data. So we've got the proposal here, and it came considerably under what we were anticipating, and it was just due to you're taking a best guess basically, and right now eggs are $6 a dozen. I mean, so what is fiber going to be? So
This book, like 800, isn't that what we were?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking.
And so, and the reason is you don't know until you get the proposal. So I just did my best guess based on previous projects. We've had some quotes on fiber that were very exorbitant. So I was worried that, fiber would still be very expensive. It seems to have not been such a need at this point. So this is a good thing. We've got a good pricing on this. And then the Syntax is now under, they just got awarded the Warren County government bid for a contract. So we are able to use that to fall within our procurement policies. So any questions?
Can we share the new estimate for those of us who don't have the paper in front of us?
Tell everybody good news,
Absolutely.
the good dollar figure.
No, just
Say
the
it
out loud.
Yeah.
So the dollar amount is $160,929.20. Yay.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Grant on that? No? Great, thank you, Mr. Grant. All right, next up, we have substitute employee update and discussion, Mr. Goodwin.
Good evening. I think we have our whole team coming up this evening to join me at the table. That's it for board members. We don't have one for now, but I'm not here. Thank you, Dr. Ballinger. Well, good evening to all of you. Hope you're doing well. I wanted to present to you tonight some information, a mid-year review from ESS, also some information about our current contract with ESS. Thank you. I also wanted to take a look. I had a high-level conversation with ESS with one of their COOs as a company about a number of things I'll share with you. I also spent some time with our neighbors in Shenandoah County Frederick County, and also Winchester. I was not able to catch up with Clark County, unfortunately, but I'll provide that at another time if you still wish for me to do so. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what they're doing with substitute employees. And then we've spent a lot of time putting together a cost analysis for you to kind of hear a little bit about what we think it would cost if we were to provide our own substitutes for comparison tonight, and then just kind of open up for discussion at that point in time. So I wanted to, of course, start the presentation. I do have it on the board behind me. I think those are you. Okay. Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about that. I just want to kind of give you a little bit of a look at where we are with some metrics that were provided me with my high-level meeting. The first page of the presentation is simply identifying, you'll go to the next one. Thank you, who our members are of ESS that we talk with on a regular basis. Thomas Wright is our local person who comes and meets with employees all the time. Vivian Hicks-Jones is the hiring coordinator. I saw her today after school. She'll be back in the morning. Spends a good bit of time in our division. The main person we talk with from a school level is Jaquette Barnes. She's their senior Virginia regional manager. I met with Steve, who is actually the COO of ESS as a company, and then Doug is their senior vice president. So sometimes I talk with him about contract matters and things like that. So the next slide, please. Thanks. So at the top of the slide, the top of your printed packet and also of the slide, we want to look a little bit. This is from July to December 2022, so right before the year change. So there's some numbers there. ESS filled 2,952 positions at 84%. So that includes positions that are both with and without vacancies. And 62% of those were filled if you included all the positions in total. So they received from us 833 more requests year over year than they did in the same period last year for substitutes during the same period of time. And they filled 598 more assignments than they did last year during the same time period. So really the reason we're here tonight is because we have employees who are absent. That's really the reason you need a substitute management system at all. I did want to kind of give you a little bit of information about absences that we see, because we can't talk about providing substitutes without talking about employees being absent. So you realize we just had a holiday weekend, and so I did look back with some of the help of my friends here at the table, looking at just sort of numbers because we were interested. This past Monday, we had 85 employees out. The Friday before the break, we had 112 employees out. We thought, okay, that was a Friday, Monday thing. But if you go back to the Thursday before the Friday, you still had 104 people absent on that day. So we're running very high with employee absences. So I just want to put that on the table as a part of our discussion tonight. When you look at the kind of requests that ESS is getting, what positions that we're having to spend a lot of time, effort, energy, and resources filling, our aide, our classroom aide, instructional aide is the largest number of the positions. Clerical will be someone who's working in an office or doing something there. A counselor, we did have a long-term counselor at Ressie Jeffries Elementary School that was employed through ESS until they, licensure requirements and things like that we can do with ESS is one of the benefits. And then we have some positions here that were no sub required. That'd be like me. If I had to be out for a day and I was sick, they couldn't do that, or Dr. Ballinger or someone else. So then there are teacher absences, by and far the largest, 3,584. So the grand total of those you can see at the bottom. If you just turn to the next page or the next slide, it's actually a year back. So that's the same time period, looking at the same metrics, looking at the same numbers. So in that year, they said they received 1,474 more requests than the year before that. 1,333 more requests than the year before that. I do want to remind everyone that the year before that, we still were kind of coming out of COVID. So we were really missing a lot of school. We didn't have the need for employees to be provided a substitute because most of us were offering instruction from home. And people who needed to be in the building were there, so it was a very different kind of environment. I'll tell you a little bit of that about more in our presentation about our proposal. There are the number of positions for that year. If you look at the kind of number of absence requests you have on the next slide, there's an absence by reason. So you see we have annual leave. That's if someone's earned a vacation day, they're taking time off. Civil leave, they might have jury duty or some reason to be in court. You have some sports and coaching that sometimes are teachers or coaches and they have to be away for that day for significant events or competitions. We also have a little bit of coverage for like a nurse and admin. FFCRA is a code we use for COVID. This board has elected to continue to give employees COVID leave this year if we still have folks who are COVID. I know we've had some discussion about that, about how long that will last. We are probably one of the only in the region that are still continuing to do that for our employees. FFCRA, Family First Coronavirus Relief Act, that's what it was called for those days. We kept that in as an absence so that we could designate those days if we go look in the computer. Up until December, we had 306 days people had taken. They can take up to 10 to take care of themselves or a family member who has been tested positive for the coronavirus and needed to stay home. You look at the hybrid plan, those are newer employees. You have plans, Family Medical Leave Act. We have Plan 1 and 2 employees that have been here a different period of time, leave without pay, personal leave, professional leave, sick, and then of course workers' comp. The next page is an interesting thing, I think, for you because it really gives us a picture of absences by school. So if you want to know the number of employees that are absent at a particular school, you can take a look at that. AS Roads has around 250, I believe, Mr. Smith students in that vicinity. And then, of course, you have, I believe, LFK has as many as almost 600, I think is
Around 500.
500. So our schools range in size, which means our staff does as well at each of those facilities. This assistant superintendent's office, I'm not exactly certain which employee that was. I'd have to go and ask ESS, but it's probably tied to instruction somehow. It probably was tied there from a school, a position in that regard. But you have Blue Ridge Tech, central office, and then other positions. Of course, you're going to have your high schools with some higher numbers and your middle schools. Also a thing to consider is how long have employees been here and things like that. So people have earned sick leave and new employees are given 10 and then they have 5 personal days. So there's a variety of things there. If you look at absences by school, there's just a pie chart on the next page. That was actually a clickable. I left it in here, but it doesn't really explain as well as the slide I just covered. So I'm going to move to the next one. Absences month over month, there's a chart there. You can kind of see that when we get to the end of the year in December, the absence rate there dropped to 55%. We also had days at the end of the month that didn't need to be covered. And then here we are in January, back to 87%. Mr. Smith took the chance to sit with me and we looked a week out, like next week on Tuesday, we were having a meeting. We looked a week out and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, a 5-day work week. The average fill rate was 90% or above. Now, that's with a week's lead time. So we're going to talk in a few minutes about what happens when you cut that down to 2 days, 1 day, or 1 hour. So you'll turn the page and we'll find that information. This is the amount of time ESS is given as notification to secure a substitute for a position. So on the left, you see absence or supplemental lead time, same day, 1 day out, 2 or more days. Basically, the trend there is the more time you give someone to find a substitute, the more likely it is they're going to find a person. If you look over to the right, it's kind of for our division. 15% of the absences between September 20th and December 21st were put in with less than an hour of lead time. Almost impossible to find someone in that amount of time. 1 to 6 hours, that was 8% of the entrances. Let's see, with 6 hours to a whole day, 6% were put in with that much lead time. And then if you give 1 to 2 days, only 5%. And then 2 or more days out, you can see that that's one of our larger things. So the more time you give, the more of notice, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to fill that spot. 57% of the absence have been entered with 2 or more days in advance. So again, ESS said that really helps us secure substitutes to be in the classrooms. I don't want to go too fast, and I apologize if I am. Any questions about that so far? Okay, great. The next one, I just want to give you a little bit of an update about recruiting. What are they doing for us? That really should say July 2022, not July 2021. So they've hired 44 new substitutes for us since July of this year. We average about 55 absences per day as a school division. The current substitute pool ESS has contains 91 active substitutes defined by people who serve the majority of the week. And then they have 87 additional what they call working substitutes. Those are people who fill occasional positions, but not regularly. So if you add those two numbers together, that's what, 178 substitutes in a pool. So they also use some advertising techniques. They use job postings on Facebook and constant contact and flyer distribution, things like that. And then they monitor the subpool to make sure they're actively working with at least a minimum of 4 assignments a month. And then finally, they're holding new training for substitutes twice a month virtually and beginning on-site hiring every month. They had one just this month, and they brought in 12 individuals to add to our pool, and that was held in the front conference room where you all sometimes meet. So we provide that space. They're doing that every month, January through May, to add to the pool. So the rest of what they have here in their report is kind of a year in the making. They do provide incentives, so on occasion you might hear about substitutes winning something or providing an incentive from ESS. They gave away $1,000 in gift cards to employees for various reasons, raffles and giveaways, August to December. Some of that includes days that maybe Skyline High School needs 5 people and they have a really difficult time, so they'll just send an email out, hey, anyone who shows up today gets a $25 gift card, or things like that, or $50, just to try to get people to come. And then they did have a winner, Austin Bennix, one of our regular subs, that was excited because they had a 12 Days of Christmas contest and he won $250. That was kind of cool that they did that. So partnership overview, they do offer in-person campus training. They are members of our local Chamber of Commerce, which is a good thing. They have more than 40 long-term substitutes, and 15, I wanted to explain this, BBS is building-based substitutes. These are people that we have been identified, and they go to work every single day for us at a school, at the same school, at the same position every day to fill whatever is needed. There's monthly incentives provided to substitutes. They assist us in job fairs, and they recruit, and they fill long-term requests as needed. And then they did have a principal and a substitute survey. If you'd like, I can share those with you. I received those too. With a 3.86% average score. That's not out of 100. I just wanted to say it's out of 5. So almost 4 out of 5. But I do have that information for you. That was a lot to cover tonight, but if it's okay, I'd send it to you in an email document that you could review with some specific information. They do have a new program called Proximity Learning they talked to me about. They basically have an online learning program where they have licensed teachers and then they train someone that would be an assistant to be in the classroom to provide support. I did not go into that as a discussion with them. They offered it to me just as a piece of information on that day. It's explained here for you. If you'd like any information about it, I'd be glad to gather more. And then the last part here is just there's information for contacts for you on that back page about contact information. So Jaquette Barnes is the person who I talk with on a regular basis. She's been here before for one of our meetings. You can reach out to her, or if you want to reach out to someone through me, I'd be glad to provide you with anyone's contact information that you may need. Any questions about that mid-year review? That was fast.
Not so much about the review, but the takeaway of what you were talking about with the high employee absences. I know with what you've implemented with the attendance for the students with the awards, that seems to have been working. Could we maybe brainstorm some ideas for how we could increase the employee attendance? Maybe some awards or bonuses or something?
We have been having conversations
Okay,
about
okay,
about
That's a
wonderful,
good idea.
wonderful.
Yes, we have kind of talked about some things and thrown some things around, but we're still trying to figure out what is the issue.
Okay.
Because we want to be able to not just throw something and then it not fix the issue. We want to be sure that we're addressing what the problem is. So we're really trying to identify the problem so that we can make sure we're putting all of our efforts in that direction.
Sounds great.
And then for this upcoming year, are we still planning on following the COVID absences?
No.
Or we're just
So
gonna slide it?
that was one thing that
sick?
we talked about in July as a board, and we said that this would be the last year that we would offer that, and that next year we would no longer offer the COVID leave as a school division.
I thought I remembered that, but just,
Yes, ma'am.
just clear.
We had that conversation in July.
On behalf of the employees, they've been very grateful, but we are the only division in the area that I'm aware of that continues to do that. And so it's been a wonderful thing. We still have had people who've needed to stay home, and I'm sure you're familiar with friends and others who've had to do that as well, but that is something that you identified as something we talked about earlier. So, but that's a great idea, so we need to really explore that. The next piece that I have here for you is just investing in your students. A lot of times when we talk about money, we don't really know, like this is, if you took a $1 bill and you divided it up, ESS provided to me this, what they actually do with the dollar. If you think of that as 100%, 82.5% goes to their payroll and insurances, and they talk about how they cover workers' compensation, general liability, payroll services, they do payroll taxes, and things like that. The next 14% is basically program management, which would include what they do there is recruiting, hiring, training, coaching, placing, disciplining, managing, retaining. They provide benefits and incentives. They also pay for the frontline system we use to manage substitutes. Customized reporting, they have meetings with schools and with us, of course, and then they offer incentives and collaborative strategies to try to solve absences. And then the last piece there is just income tax and reinvestment capital that they use in their company. I just wanted to provide that to you so you can kind of see what they provide when we talk about what would we do and what can we provide if we brought that in-house. So I thought that'd be a nice comparison. Okay, so when I had my meeting with ESS, I believe they may have watched our school board meeting where there were questions about, hey, what do you think about if we brought this in-house? Can you provide information? I got a call shortly thereafter, and I had a nice visit. They sent someone with Jaquette to talk with me about that. In that meeting, the discussion came up from me. They just kind of asked, what do we need? I brought up that we'd like to see folks paid a little bit more of their rate, because one of the pieces that we hear a lot of times is, hey, I'd like for my pay to be increased. And you as a board have bumped the pay rate up, but we want to remain competitive and attractive to our employees and give them an opportunity to be able to make enough money to, have what they need. In that regard, they said to me that they have really enjoyed their partnership with us, and they understand that costs are moving and districts assume a lot of costs and move forward with an uncertain markup. So they said that they would be willing to consider if we were to increase our substitute rates by $10 for the employee, they would take the mark up that they currently have and reduce it by 2 full percentage points. So if we go up for the employee $10 for their rate, they would come down on their markup rate 2 points. So that was just sort of more money in the pocket of the employees, which would cost us the same amount. So that's kind of what I said. I need to have a level field, but I want our employees to have more. I know that's asking a lot, but it's kind of like trying to drive a bargain for the employees. They also said that they've allocated additional resources with Vivian, who you met as a name in that report. I passed her on my way here tonight. She's been at our school all afternoon and will be there again tomorrow. She's there regularly as our local person, taking over that hiring, recruiting, training process to have someone identified. So they said that they would be willing to have her on site actively and closely engaged with all the substitutes. They feel she'd be a great fit to help support our division. And they also would plan to offer substitutes an opportunity to help recruit at events and utilize referrals. They said the latest hiring event approach turned out to be very successful last week. We brought in 12 people, hired 7, 3 are in pre-hire, and we anticipate a minimum of 10 more in the next on-site event, which actually happened this week. And then finally, they said they're offering a referral bonus and incentive program. They have a $100 referral bonus for anyone in the school division, community, or current pool that refers someone else to work with ESS. So we'll continue to do this. They'll drive this. In addition, they plan to offer a $2,500 raffle for February. And any substitute who works 15 out of 20 days will be eligible for the raffle. And the winner will be selected that first day of March. So that's a pretty nice incentive to be able to get your name in for $2,500. I didn't provide that to you. I think it was an oversight on my part, so I apologize, but I'd be glad to do that. Any questions about that? All right. The next piece of conversation is a visit with our neighbors. So I provided for you 3 pieces of information that's inside of your folder. There's an orange Sharpie that has highlighted the 3 school divisions. So just for my own purposes, I have Shenandoah first. In the middle, I have Winchester. And then I have Frederick County last. You might be looking at those in a different way, but I kind of want to try to give you the answers from 3 places at a time. So I'll try to make sense of all that for you. The number 1 question I asked for each of them when I talked to them, and then I put all this information in the sheet for you. I did produce an Excel spreadsheet, but it was so small. I didn't want to put that in front of you. The typing was so small, the print. Shenandoah County, they budget around $800,000 for substitutes. But they're looking at trying to increase that budget because there's a bit more plus workers' compensation, unemployment, and FICA costs. So they talked to me about that, and those are based on the experience, basically, of the employees. So we would have our own costs, and I actually have those in a folder. And Rob is really familiar with all that stuff if we get down into the numbers, and does a great job helping us each day to remember what all those are. So Shenandoah County, $800,000. Winchester, Doug there said that they have a couple of different ways to look at their budget. For substitute teachers with FICA, they have $620,000 in their budget. And then they have, with the FICA at $670,000. So, and then there are other substitutes they're paying. They have another $250,000, but with FICA it's $270,000. So you really have to add their two together to get $940,000. And then the final budget, of course, from Frederick County Public School, which if you think about it in size, is about 3 times what we are. They have a budget of almost $3 million, $2,857,000. And then on top of that, they add another 10% because that has to be the fringe benefits and the wages and things like that. So if you add another $285,000, you're really over $3 million for the budget there. So.
And what's Warren County?
Oh, Warren County, can I present that to you in just a minute? I have that on the sheet in the back. I did not do ours in this fashion.
Okay.
I have it on a sheet for you though, I promise. It's all there.
Okay.
Do you want me to pull it out in just a minute or do that?
I don't want to interrupt your presentation.
Okay. All right, I'll answer every question you have. I'm sorry. All right, and then that's question number 1. The next question that you have on the next page is, do you have employees that are actually dedicated to providing substitutes? And if so, what does that look like? So Shenandoah County, they said that they do not have just one employee dedicated to substitute management. One of the HR assistants helps with coordinating the training and verifying that substitutes meet the requirements before being added to their management system, which they use Frontline, we do too, same system. And then school secretaries at the school level check the system each day to verify that all the absences are covered. And if they're not, then those people have to be tasked along with the principals and administrative team to find people for classrooms. If you look over to compare that to Winchester, they use Frontline, same system we use, and they have employees self-report absences. And then if they notice there that on Frontline that there's not a position filled, administrators and administrative assistants have to go to work to fill all those positions at the building level. It says they have purchased and will be transitioning to SmartFind Express in the fall, which is a competitor process to Frontline. And then the final school division, Frederick County Public Schools, they actually have an HR analyst who manages recruitment and onboarding of all the substitutes. If they have issues, then they have an assistant director get involved, or sometimes a director. And then they have an absence management system that calls out for substitutes, but they do need to review applications, do the references, ensure training is complete, do background checks, and all those processes. And then they have a second analyst who actually manages the system, and that person also has an investment of time in substitutes, but not quite at the level of the first person. So she's on the same analyst pay scale, but it's been there longer, and there's her salary. She doesn't spend as much time on substitutes, but she has lots of other duties as well. So they have a director, assistant director, and then these people working on substitutes for them. I asked a couple of other questions as sort of follow-ups there. What level are they? Of course, in Winchester, they're actually including, they have 7 principals, 12 assistant principals, 2 admin assistants at every school, middle and high school. They have more because those are the people doing all the work. And then if you go over to our final comparison, Frederick County, they said they spend, there's an analyst position and the person has other recruitment duties. One of those people is approximately $58,000, and then the salary of the other person is there at the top, that's $72,000. So it could be higher or lower depending on who you were to hire when I talked with them there. The next question was really about fill rates. Fill rates was an interesting comparison to make. Shenandoah County said that their fill rate is 85 to 90%, which is pretty high. Well, I told you that's what ours is too next week. But as we approach that, it just trickles down and then it gets lower. And then while we're on that same page, just what is your rate of pay for substitutes? They pay $150 a day for a 4-year degree in Shenandoah County, $125 a day with no degree. Long-term substitutes are $225 a day with a 4-year degree and $175 a day with no degree. I think we understand they use some of their CARES money to help pay for that, which we use CARES money for a variety of things in our classrooms and to provide the support coaches and other people here. So each division had an opportunity to use their funds in the way that they needed at that time. The fill rate as compared to Winchester, 70% is their lowest. They said the early in absences reported, the earlier it is to fill, same thing I described. And then they pay $150 a day, and their long-term sub is $241.50 a day. Same application, CARES funds to fund that. Now, when that runs out, I think they'll have to build that into their budget to be able to maintain a rate that's that rate. And then Frederick County said their rates are very low, in the high 70s this week, but they've dropped lower each year based on absences. Same conversation I had at the beginning of the conversation about employee absences. They pay $110 for degreed teacher substitutes, $95 for non-degreed, $90 for aides, and their long-term subs are paid off their teacher scale based off of their experience. So they do that kind of more as an employee instead of as a substitute. Any questions about just that comparison information? Because once I turn the page, there's just one small piece to cover, and then we'll be on to the information that Ms. Salen's asked for. All right. If not, the only other thing I asked, really to try to describe to you tonight, are you able to find substitutes? Because if you're doing this yourself, that's going to absolutely be fundamental. So when I talked to our partners in Shenandoah, they currently have 324 substitutes who are actively working. They advertise those things through their parent messaging system and on social media accounts. And if you look over at our neighbors in Winchester, they have 119 substitutes. Their optimum number is 180, and they hire all year long. Finding people willing to substitute consistently has dropped since COVID, according to their human resources director. They employ flexible substitutes. They commit to working 4 days a week at the same facility, and then principals are allowed to assign them as necessary on any given day. That's like our building-based sub, when you heard me describe that. So that was a big help, according to Doug in Winchester, and he said, especially since absences are unpredictable, you can stabilize that by having people assigned to a building. And then finally, over our neighbors in Frederick County, they have 437 in their system. It's been difficult to find them, and getting them to cover enough of our vacancies and daily absences. They're seeing a slight improvement, but it's a little bit early to tell. And so basically, she said that of the 437, about half of those people are actually working, but they have that many in their system altogether. None of the school divisions really foresee changes in how they do what they're doing right now. They'll continue to do it on their own, but of course that could be up to their board, or it could be up to their investigative process. One of the things that was noted from Winchester was just the critical impact of time is really what's important in absences. They say to please tell staff to let them know at least the night before, since fill rates are substantially higher when you have that timing. And then maintaining minimum number of available substitutes is key. They need to have about a 150 with 180 being optional. And finally, one of the things that I learned from talking to Frederick County is that there's a lot to recruiting subs and dealing with issues. She described that one of the most difficult things is just dealing day to day with the things that arise, like from a school complaint or things like that you may have to deal with a substitute employee. It just is time consuming, and you want to solve it in the right fashion, so it takes a good team of people to do that. Any questions about that comparison information? So I want to thank the people that I've worked with, because I didn't do this alone. Of course, Dr. Ballinger was immensely helpful. Rob's been helpful with numbers, and Buck is really the person who taught me so many things about what I know today. But I have learned a lot of things from investigating this. We want to present to you tonight what we believe would be necessary for us to bring this in-house, and then answer any questions you have and just have a discussion with you about other information you need in the future. So we see this as some of the positions that would be required for us to manage an in-house process. So we believe that the first position, or one of the positions, would need to be an HR analyst. You heard that term used in another division. We kind of just used the same term, but that could be called something very different. It could be an administrator for substitutes or whatever we choose. But the analyst would need to oversee the program. The responsibilities would be the day-to-day management of that employee substitute pool. And then that person would report directly to me, and I would provide support to whatever is needed in that capacity. The specific task they would have to take on: recruiting, hiring, and retaining substitutes to serve in the system, including the applications, the interviewing, the background checks, and onboarding into the system. They need to train the substitutes and place them, and then manage and evaluate them, provide timesheets and information for payroll, collaborate with payroll to make sure people are paid in a timely fashion, and then also manage frontline software program, which actually we'd have to buy. You'll see that as a cost. Currently, ESS buys that for us right now. We'd work with school administrators, they would, in placing, training, and evaluating substitutes, and then they would provide reports to me, and then I would come and provide a report to you, because you'd want to monitor our process for improvement, and so would our superintendent and our team. The cost for this, Dr. Ballinger, we looked at this together. If we looked at it just kind of on an admin scale, because this person would need to have admin responsibilities, the cost for that salary with a person with, was it 10 years experience?
I believe it was 10 years.
About 10 years experience. And then fringe benefit, the benefits cost and insurance, the total cost for that employee would be $139,225 actual dollars if that person was indeed exactly as the person that we tried to outline in the budget. That might be a little bit less, could be a little bit more, depending on the person who's required there for a salary perspective. Then that person would need to have, we decided, some support, because managing the program and having all of these people at school is going to require a lot of paperwork processes. So due to the volume of substitutes and task requirements, additional support personnel would need to be provided. We recommend that we provide 2 people. There is a scale for secretaries, so 2 staff members on the secretary scale. Grade 9 is the one the board has approved currently for that task. We ask that they be hired to support the implementation and day-to-day operations, paperwork processes and such, and placement and phone calls, things like that. These people would be responsible for the application, paperwork part, interviewing, the background check, conducting it, not just reviewing it, onboarding into the system that we have, which will be frontline, training, placement of substitutes, and then managing and kind of evaluating, listening to principals, moving people around for positions, timesheet review, and then kind of also working in that software program. These folks would also cross over with some people I currently have in HR with some of the duties. I have a payroll specialist, I have a human resources specialist, and I have an administrative assistant that works in the same department with me, who have many, many tasks for the employees we have. These folks would interact with them, and some of the tasks may cross over when you think about that. The next page gives a projected cost for the 2 positions, combined salary-wise, $71,598. Other costs associated, $17,900. With insurance, depending on the plan they took, and we just picked the middle plan for these employees. We didn't pick the most expensive or the least expensive, just right in the middle. The total cost for those 2 employees would be another $115,898. Additional costs, really when you think about workers' compensation and unemployment and things, all the divisions around me said really they use 10% to kind of figure out what above the labor cost do you need to add there. That total labor cost projected this year without a markup, when we looked at it, would be $533,333. You might ask, hey, how'd you get that? So what we looked at was how much money each month does ESS cost us, and then we pulled the labor out of that. We're spending around $20,000 a month for ESS substitutes. In addition to that, one of the other things we're doing is paying teachers their block cost or an hour or a block rate to cover an hourly rate or a block rate to cover absence employees that haven't been hired or we couldn't find. So the employee cost from ESS is around $20,000 a month. The cost we're paying current employees to cover those other positions is $10,000 a month. So you're really looking at another $10,000 a month. We did not include that. So when you see the asterisks down there for labor, I put those there to remind us as we have a conversation that there's an additional $10,000 of expenditures that you may consider to be substitute employees that we're actually paying ourselves because they're employees covering positions, either hourly rate or things like that.
That's per month, so that would be
Per month.
$100,000 for the year.
So that 533 labor really would be 633 if we were to add that $100,000 in for those 10 months. So other costs associated with the program, unemployment workers' compensation, if it remained at 333, that'd be 10%, it's $53,000. Software program we have to buy, that costs about $20,000. Currently that's provided by ESS, so we'd have to buy it. The background checks, what I believe we would need to do for a substitute pool would be 160 people. So we'd have to add those employees. Now, some of those employees may have a background check conducted and they're working for us as a sub or we have it in our system. But if they all had to have that, that's another $4,320. It's $27 a piece when people come in. And then a materials budget, our department's gonna need to do recruiting and have supplies, things they hand out, they're gonna need to attend functions, they're gonna need to have, just basic desk supplies and computer supplies, things like that. So if you take the total cost of the additional staffing I provided to you tonight, that'd be $255,123. That includes benefits, salary, and all the pieces. Total of the other costs associated, I just mentioned to you above, $82,653. That labor cost projection, because we still have to pay people, and we'd have to pay them at the rate we pay them now or more, would be $533,333, not including the 100 I described to you a minute ago. That projected cost would be $871,109. And then that did not include, again, the $100,000 we're paying outside of that. I go back to Frederick County with a $3 million budget. We're about a third of the size. That really approaches $1 million as we look at the budget. So I also wanted to give you with a total that we paid ESS over the years, kind of for comparison. So Rob was nice enough, Mr. Valentine, was nice enough to provide me with some numbers. And going back to fiscal year 2019, right before the pandemic, we had a cost for substitutes of $643,928. And then in fiscal year 20, you'll see that drop to $483,949. 21 even, less because we didn't have to have all the substitutes for the whole year, $344. This last year, we were at $788, $765. And then right now, where we are currently, as of today, we've spent $378,414.44. So now that's at a 70% to 80% fill rate. So I just want to bring to the table as well, we all want it to be 100. We all want it to be 100%. But if we were to fill 100% of the positions, our budget would not hold it. We'd have to increase the budget a lot because we're really 20% off of, we'd have to pay that other 20%. So that does have an impact. Our schools have done an amazing job of covering slots that are not filled during the day and moving people around and shifting them. But that does bear a cost, and that's in that $10,000 beside what people are giving of their own, free will and volunteer wise.
And if you don't mind, there's also those 17 sub-positions that we actually use CARES funds for, that we assign to each of the schools. And that's not figured into this because those positions will go away anyway. But that's additional dollars that we're spending right now that the board approved those 17 positions to go out, and they're in the schools, they were hired on an instructional assistant salary, and their job is to sub and to fill those vacancies. So we also have those 17 positions that if we keep them in the budget this next year, we would have to build a little bit in to support that. But then again, they will go away that following year. We would have them for one more year.
They're being used every single day.
Oh yeah, those will be the first ones that administrators will pull on.
It's an incredible group of people that we have working with us. So when you really think about the number of substitutes needed for like active substitutes, we kind of talked about that word, like who's going to show up every day. It's 110 to cover most positions. But that pool needs to be much larger than that because they won't all come to work every day. They can't. So we have 160 I projected would be our minimum need. That's why I put that number in up there for the background checks. Now, to get to Ms. Salen's question, I think you asked how much did we budget compared to the other divisions. The budget information amount for this year currently we budgeted was $618,694. That's what we budgeted this year. We looked at our fund last year. We projected that people would come back to work because the coronavirus is something that we figured out we're going to live with, we're going to come to work. We thought from an employment standpoint, we would see people reporting. In fact, as you heard in the ESS report, they're filling well more jobs than they ever have in the past, so people are not present more than they have been. In fact, they are missing a little bit more work, and so we do need to figure that out together somehow. But that's the amount. Next year, we project that we should place in the budget $720,000 to cover that. Again, that's $20,000 a month is about what it costs to ESS, and then those months are covered across those times, and so we're getting, I think I said a month, they're really been a week. So 20,000 times 36 weeks, that would be 720,000. So that's where that comes out. So the payroll, so the difference there is $101,306. When you look at what did we budget again next year, we're already increasing our budget by $100,000 just to cover those substitute costs. I did want to just bring up, because there are people currently doing things in the department I mentioned, the payroll specialist. If we did bring it in-house, there would be some impacts on some of the folks that are on the team. We currently, believe it or not, we pay 926 employees. Now that includes every employee, part-time, full-time, that receives any kind of payment. So our payroll specialist, Roxy, has to issue payroll for that to every single person. And she does an incredible job, but that would bring the number from 926 up to 1,086. And then our benefits specialist, it could increase the paperwork and processes that she takes care of if we did have any workers' compensation, unemployment claims that she manages with benefits, full-time employees, 779 people. And then the HR administrative assistant, Teresa, who's our newest member, she does all the file management, the uploading and the forms, and that would increase kind of the whole, while some of these jobs will cross over, ultimately she's gonna have to be the final person to put something in a file, to put something on Talent Ed, electronic application, and put it in the right place for Talent Ed that we use for personnel files. We can't give that task to a lot of people because it is private, it's a personnel matter. So those will go in. So there's a little bit of an impact on the system if we bring it in-house, and I thought I would be remiss if I didn't just at least say it would be for those three people. But I've done a lot of talking. I have a lot of other information if you have questions. Thank you, Bud, for sitting next to me. I really appreciate that. We ask any questions that you answer any questions.
You've shared a lot of information, a lot of good information, got a lot of good details, so thank you so much for doing all that.
Thank
It
you.
really, and putting it all laid out, it's very easy, I think, for us to look through.
I hope so, thank you. It's what, we hope it's what you wanted, and we hope it's helpful. And we do know it's a work session, so I just ask if there's any other information you need or require. Certainly, I know Mr. Rinaldi's not here, so I have a folder for him, we'll get to him.
Well, looking at what you're projecting, you would have to pay people, all these people in-house to do this. I think I see that as we should really appreciate what the woman who used to do this job did and how grossly underpaid she was for doing so. So that is sad that she was just dismissed so quickly without putting together one of these beforehand. Has ESS addressed the issues that were sent to us regarding, because the top three complaints were the payroll mistakes, lack of communication, which I think you said that Vivian is going to be put on site now, so they will have
At least half
hopefully
time,
better
much more frequently, yes.
communication. And then the complaint that teachers can't request specific subs. Can ESS fix those things?
I believe the request of specific subs can be fixed because in the program itself, we actually could go in and assign specific people to certain schools and positions. Again, the lead time is the thing that's really required. So if you know you're going to be out, you can tell someone, they can go in and select it, you can assign someone. That's one issue. The other issue that you mentioned was payroll issues. I believe those have all been corrected. I personally talked with each person that any board member has identified to me that did not get paid or there was something that was an issue. There were some hiring issues that some ESS employees, a few, stated that they felt like they were having to wait too long to be employed. I looked into each one of those and I met with Jaquette Barnes, who her information is in here as a regional person. She showed me all the processes that needed to take place still for those employees. And 90% of the time or greater, the employee on their side had not uploaded forms or information that they needed to in order to begin or did not come for, a personal meeting. So I'm not blaming that on anyone so much as that's the explanation that I can provide for you, is that in each of those instances that I'm aware of, there was some process that wasn't finished on the employee side, on the applicant side. And for each one of those, I did not find that there was someone who did not start, that I know of, just that I know of. I did go and personally ask each time one of you have identified to me someone so that we could remedy that. yes.
And Mr. Goodwin does a good job. So when you guys do bring those issues to me, I go have a conversation with Mr. Goodwin, and then he immediately will reach out to ESS and work through the situation. So, we do address those when they do come up, whether they come to me or whether they come to him or to Buck or to you as a board member, because we want our people to be happy and we want to work through those situations to make sure that there's not a lot of road bumps. And so we do address those, and I just want to say thank you to Mr. Goodwin for the work that he puts into this when there are those issues, checking into it, doing his due diligence to make sure that we're addressing the issue and that we're correcting the issue to move forward.
Thank you. We just want the problem to be solved. So whatever the issue is, I appreciate people identifying. When someone hasn't been paid, that's a high impact event. And they have issued checks before in off cycles because something on the backside was the way that it wasn't, or a person started at a different time. They've corrected those things and gone outside of their normal process for me. And we do want folks to be happy. And if something is on the backside not finished, I've asked them to just let me know. Because a lot of these folks, live here and I live here too. So if I could find someone connected, then we just get the process finished and we get them on board. So I think they've heard that issue, they've heard that as a need to improve, and they are working that.
And when you said that Vivian, I think that's what it was, is gonna be on site, like, is that daily now, or what does that change? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I'm gonna go back.
And when you say on site, do you mean like she's just at the
In our
central
division,
office,
in our
or
division.
somewhere?
No, she goes out to the schools as well. So Thomas, so they, if you look back at the presentation, kind of like from a structural standpoint, Vivian and Thomas are the people we see. So Vivian does the hiring. She's the person who's in front of the person that's applying, doing the paperwork, calling, meeting. Today she was there for a half a day to meet folks, and a lot of them didn't show up. But tomorrow again, she understands that there's 8 people coming, so she's coming back. We provided space for her as part of our contract. And so they have an office upstairs, and then they just arrange with me when they need a downstairs or an upstairs conference room. And then Thomas, he's really the account manager, so you'll hear his name a lot too. He's in the schools, talking to people, moving things around. Vivian, what they said to me, so I just want to say it one more time because that's a great question. We have allocated additional coverage with Vivian, active on site, and are closely engaging our local substitutes. We feel she's a great fit to help support the district or division. Also, we plan to offer the substitutes an opportunity to help recruit at events as well for our referral program. So on site would be, sometimes she has meetings and uses our space because that's where the identified office is, but then she goes out to the schools, checking in with those front, you all been in the schools, the people who know everything are right there in the front office. So if you need to know if someone's there, where they are, you just find those people and they know everything. So she's engaging with them, and then in the buildings, working with the local substitutes, the people who are our employees. Whether they work for ESS and they get paid by them, they're still our people, so we treat them like they're our own. And so yes, I believe that would be a much more active process. They heard that, and I described to them that some of the feedback we received from current substitutes was that we did have an on-site person very regularly, and then we didn't. And because they had some management changes with ESS, they weren't completely aware of that model from before. So I described that, and they said, well, this is why we're receiving feedback about needing someone to engage personally with the local employees, because someone was here. So they realized that, they're putting that in place.
And I think, Dr. Funk, you asked, is she here daily? So the answer to that is no. She wouldn't be here daily, so she would just be here just whenever she would.
They committed to me half-time, so, and then it could be more than that. But these are really points for discussion, like if the board wants to pursue increasing rates and looking at the percentage points, on the backside where we pay to put more money in the pockets of our substitutes and things like that. Whatever you give me as feedback, I will give to them. So if you want somebody here all the time, I'll say our board wants somebody here all the time. What can you do?
And to clarify just that way, in case ESS is watching this, they know exactly what I was talking about before. The exact complaint was that a lot of the newly enrolled teachers are not in the system and cannot assign a substitute to a position the first few years of being on the job. This makes it a struggle for the teacher and the school staff to schedule a substitute if they're in need. if that teacher wants a particular sub, they are not able to request one because the information on the teacher is not in the system. It is like no one is working in the head office and forgot that there was new staff in the schools. This has been a known issue with no assistance to approve it. They have spoken with Thomas Wright. So I guess it's the new teachers aren't getting added in quickly enough, and so that's where the gap's happening. Has he corrected that now?
So thank you. You very clearly told me what I did not understand when you asked me the first time. You're specifically talking about brand new employees are not being entered in the system quickly enough so they can select the substitutes and assign them. I will determine that and make sure I respond back to you.
Okay.
But thank you. I misunderstood initially. I did talk to them about the timeliness and personal assignment, but I did not understand when you said that initially, that it specifically impacts brand new employees. There's a lag time. I will make sure
Well,
that's
about
fixed.
3 years is what
Oh.
it sounds like, so I
That's
guess
a long
maybe once
time.
they're tenured, then they get, I don't know.
I'm sure that is not the intent
Okay,
or design of that program, so I will bring that up again.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Goodwin on this?
So I think as far as for us as a school division, you get, as board members, take this information, look over, because we'll need to have additional conversations specifically to determine which way the budget committee and what direction we're gonna go. So I guess would we want to plan for this to be at our retreat in February to kind of have a little more in-depth discussion as far as which direction we need to go so that we can start planning and budgeting? How would you like to?
I think so, because you, as a budget committee, will be meeting once or twice before then, right? So
Yeah.
that can be in that conversation,
Yeah.
and then we can hear what their thoughts are
Yes,
on
ma'am.
it as well. That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Madam
Yeah,
Chair,
thanks for
if you
all
don't
this work.
mind, could you actually do the instruction report? Because we have a guest that's been waiting back here, and I should have moved her up to third.
Okay.
So I need to apologize to Jane, but if you could move her.
Absolutely. We're gonna move to our instructional report. Thank you for your patience, Ms. Baker and Ms. Bragg.
Good evening. So I grabbed the wrong item. Sorry. I just have a quick statement that I want to address with you all regarding Warren County's procedures for recognizing and notifying students that are receiving like national achievement awards, given what's going on in the news. And so I just have a quick statement about that, and then Ms. Baker is going to provide us with a presentation about all the great things that are happening at Blue Ridge Tech Center, and I'm going to turn it over to her. So it is the practice of Warren County Public Schools to notify a student and their parent or guardian when a national recognition or scholarship has been awarded. And we share in that celebration of their achievement by recognizing them in school, posting it on social media, websites, and that sort of thing that goes along with the honor of that award. In the case of National Merit Scholars, the high school is notified by College Board if a student qualifies for the commendation, if they are selected as a finalist, and if they are chosen as a winner. The student and their parent or guardian would be immediately notified and updated throughout that process. The student's award would be shared with the school community, and they would also be recognized at the Scholarship Awards Night that's held in the spring. Regarding our local scholarships, information regarding the student application process to apply for our locally awarded scholarships will be shared with students by their counseling departments through the high school very soon, probably around the 1st of February. The recipients of local scholarships will be invited to attend our annual Scholarship Awards Night in the spring. And the date of those awards nights will be April 24th at 7 p.m. for Warren County High School and May 1st at 7 p.m. for Skyline High School. That's it. All right. Baker, I turn it over to you.
email below that, I think. There you go. Well, thank you for giving me your time tonight. Normally, I kind of show up in February because February is a National CTE Month, but with schedules being what they are, tonight was a little more convenient, to be honest, for me. But I also wanted to leave next February the 1st the opportunity for some of our students to come and see you all and just share some of the things that they've been up to. Some of the awards that they've been winning. She was talking about SAT and ACT and national honors and so forth. We've had some national honors as well recently with our Project Lead the Way program. Some of our health and medical science students have actually placed in the top 1% on their credentialing tests, scoring perfect 600s, which is just, it is based on students, but it is also based on the caliber of teachers that we are able to hire and have been able to hire. And that has been because of support from our school board members such as you and from the Board of Supervisors. And for that, we are eternally grateful. Just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that have been going on with our CTE program. Here's some pictures. One is the blessing box that now sits down near the library. The other happens to be one of our new classes that came on board this year, which was our building trades program. And the students are actually constructing a model house to scale with headers and doorways and everything else, so that next year, should they funnel out into the electricity class or the carpentry class, they'll have that piece of information behind them and will start to work on the house. And if you've driven by the tech center lately, you've seen that we have the modular house well underway, and the goal is to have it completed by the end of the school year and auctioned off come this summer, fall. So we'll see how that works. A lot depends on weather and so forth. But if you'll go, here we go. This is just some information for you all. Currently, our enrollment in grades 6 through 12, we fill a little over 3,200 seats. And I say seats because we have students that take multiple courses with us. You know, they come, they try us out, they like us, they see things that interest them, and they see a purpose in what they're doing. So quite often, students come back and repeat or add on to other classes that will segue into a career pathway. In our grades 6 through 8 exploratories, this fall we had 587 enrolled. This spring we have 642. I will say that that number dropped some. Some of it had to do with being able to hire qualified teachers. We can talk a little bit about that as well. Grades 9 through 12, 831 enrolled this fall, and currently we're looking at about 768 in the spring. Some of that is done on purpose, in all honesty. When our funding for next year is looked at in enrollment, what they look at is what came through the reports with the fall master schedule collection. So if we're showing more enrollment in the fall, then that's going to give us a boost with funding Perkins. So that's why we're looking higher in the fall than we do in the spring. And a lot of times too, students, because of spring sports and so forth, decide that, well, you know, I'd rather not put that time in, or, you know, part-time jobs, those types of things. Economics and personal finance, we have 379 students enrolled in that course. And as you know, that is a required course by the state of Virginia. At Blue Ridge Technical Center, this year we're serving 723 students. In the fall, we had 424. Just to give you a comparison, last year in the fall, we had an enrollment of 379. In the spring, we have 344 versus last spring with 299. And then the Y is for the year, because we do have some programs such as our carpentry and automotive that run the entire year. So we have 45 students enrolled in those courses. This is just to show you where we have grown. These numbers, obviously we don't have them for this year, but last year we looked at 21 licenses earned. Those would be, for instance, your CNA licenses through the Virginia Board of Nursing, 526 industry certifications, 210 with the workplace readiness, which is a state recognized, again, workplace readiness in that it works with students on being prepared for the workplace. So we had a total of 757 credentials, 625 students achieving one or more. In 2021, notice how the numbers were lower then. Obviously, that was the year with COVID and the Monday, Tuesday, and the Wednesday. We had ninth graders coming in on Wednesdays and Thursday, Friday, and another group and so forth. So obviously, we had some issues just being able to get our hands on the kids, much less to do credential testing. And then 1920, COVID again there was an issue. So things are looking up. We've already this year credentialed over 300 students just from the fall semester. Go ahead to the next one. Challenges, lack of qualified teachers, and our agriculture, our family and consumer science, and our business programs were kind of hit this year. We have picked up some steam in that we've hired an agriculture teacher second semester who is a wonderful, fully qualified person. Love those. Family and consumer science position has been filled. Those two positions were over at Warren Middle. And then we had a business position that we needed to fill as well. Finances, it's always going to be a challenge because of the price of things increasing. It seems like in some funding areas we gain, and in other funding areas we lose. So that kind of balances out. But the cost of equipment is on the rise. The cost of the consumables is on the rise. We just took in our welding class is one of the top choices of students, and every offering we have is full, but we just took in a $3,000 order of steel, hopefully to get us through this semester. New programming is also just to be able to afford not only the equipment, but to afford new staff as that comes on. Dr. Ballinger and I have talked quite often about, well, if, it's like I take him, this is my dream list, but it's happening. It's not happening as fast as we would like, but it is happening. Go ahead to the next one. This year we brought in the building trades class, was introduced. We also, while it was approved, we were able to hire a full-time criminal justice instructor, and criminal justice 2 is now being offered. We're actually over what the suggested enrollment for his criminal justice 2 class is, and the students now have shirts with the emblem on the breast side that says criminal justice and so forth, and they're eating it up. And I will give kudos to all of our law enforcement in the area and courthouse people. They've all been so welcoming, and we've even had people from the military who work on that side of law enforcement, people from the FBI. It's been amazing who all has actually come through our building to work with that program.
And this was a program we started as a pilot, thinking that maybe we could get 1 or 2 classes in the first semester or the second semester, and then it has busted at the seams. So it had to move a little bit quicker than we anticipated.
Much quicker, but it is wonderful. The gentleman teaching it is a retired chief of police for Manassas City, and has done just wonderful things with the kids. They're expecting to go in there and to see him interact with them and to see that, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, that structure. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And those kids are really eating it up. Proposals for 23, 24. We are looking and talking about bringing, well, we already have it, an intro to health and medical science. And what happened is I was not being able to fill those middle school exploratories. What I did was we combined some classes and moved one of my health and medical science teachers up to Skyline Middle School. And she's now teaching up there part of the day. I think the kids are loving that as well. I mean, you know, you wouldn't want to learn about blood and guts and all that stuff. But anyway, it's going very well. One of our tech ed teachers is retiring, and so what we're looking at is to have that position become a health and medical science exploratory position. So, you know, we're not looking to create cost issues. We're just looking to use the resources we've got and shift. And then full-time work-based learning coordinator. Right now, my coordinator is packed to the gills with students that are enrolled in our work-based learning program. And this is just, one happens to be one of the bakeries here in town. One of our culinary students who's doing an internship there. The other happens to be one of our carpentry students, and he's working an internship over at Lowe's. And this is just with requirements for graduation, students can meet, it's an either or type of thing. And the one highlighted is that a student should complete a high-quality work-based learning experience. And that's what we're offering our students. And it's not necessarily just students at Blue Ridge Tech Center. We have students that are in the early childhood education programs that are out working with young children, depending on where they're located. Our DECA students are out working in businesses. So I don't want people to think that work-based learning is going to automatically tie to the tech center, because it doesn't. It's open to all students. Okay. This is just, currently we have 54 CTE students participating in work-based learning. That does not include our site-based or school-based enterprises, like our DECA, who run and sell food at the ball games, or we have the One Love Cafe at our building, those types of things. These are actually out receiving paychecks in the community. This is just to show you, and I apologize because I know it's kind of small. The green is the Warren County employee or employer. The blue happens to be where we are able to best place a student. So you can see not everything is correlated, but the fact that we are able at this point to be able to have the students out earning a paycheck and learning what it is to be in the work environment is a very positive for them. Okay. These are just some of the employers that work with us: McDonald's, Front Royal Dental Care, Marlin Motors, so forth and so on. Okay. And then this is just something I wanted to show, learning through service. Again, there's the blessing box. The students created the sign that the box rests on using our CNC machine there at the building. The Sheriff's Department approached us. This is their little buggy car, whatever that is they use for parades and so forth. I think it had been in storage for multiple years, and they approached us to see, well, can you help us out here? So our automotive students took that on as a challenge to get it fired up and ready to roll. Okay. This is something that it was really fun. You know, there are things out there, and we talk about gender and different areas being open to different genders more often, and things being non-traditional. I had 2 students that I took down to Palmyra, Rappahannock Power Elective, their co-op, which covers, the members cover Maryland, DC, and Virginia, had what they called a Girl Power offering. And one happens to be a building trade student, and the other happened to be one of our electricity students. And I took them down, and the entire day was filled with working with females who are in that non-traditional area. And this happened specifically to be linemen. And to see those girls put those spikes on and try to climb those poles and that type of thing. One of the young ladies that went with us, she's actually written up in their monthly magazine that has come out. And it's because she happened, should she go into becoming an lineman, which is what she wants, she would be 3rd generation. Her grandfather did it, her father did it, and now, so she was really excited about that. But it was an awesome experience. And it's just one of those things where if we can make our students start to feel comfortable being in an environment that isn't necessarily always open to them, then we will have done our jobs very well. And these two young ladies were fired up. And while I am retiring, it is my recommendation next year that we take about 20 of them. We can take a whole bus for all I care. You know, I just think it'd be wonderful. But again, I've been telling the electricity teacher, I said, we got to take them. We got to take them. I mean, they came back with, I don't want to say gift bags because they were canvas bags with all kinds of equipment and hard hats and the whole bit. It was just a wonderful time. But that's it as far as what's going on now. Again, February 1st, we're going to have some kids available. Any questions? No?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say, anytime I run into a middle school or high school parent, they always bring up some really cool new class or something that their kid is taking, and just the options and the variety they are able to offer is really just, it's really phenomenal.
We keep pushing, but, you know, and it'll be conversation for another day. We're outgrowing it, we have outgrown our building. And now that we have pre-K there, because of the construction elsewhere, we don't even have a meeting room. It's crazy, but it's also a wonderful problem to have.
Thank you for giving us that.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Baker, and I apologize for waiting so long to get you up and made so.
Believe it or not, I have a virtual class starting at 8 o'clock, so
Okay.
I'm out of here.
Thank you. Okay, so up next, we're going to have Facilities, Child Nutrition, and Transportation Report. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I just have a brief report from just each of the departments of some things occurring, and we'll start off with child nutrition. And so for staffing, all our staff positions in our kitchens are filled at this time. Year to date, we've served over 651,000 meals, which is up by 124,000 meals from last year. Reminder, at the beginning of this year, we looked at continuing to allow or continuing to offer free meals for all our students, and we were looking at how that would affect us financially through our food service. So we continue to have this year in excess of 77,663 for the school year. So that's good. We're very fortunate that our principals and administration at all the schools have been very helpful in being able to provide for our breakfast and different forms of our hot and cold, as well as our second chance meals. That's helped us a lot. with the food supply and the food chains that we have, that's always a challenge, but we've been able to continue to get in supplies. I had mentioned earlier in a report that our food service department was working with Fort Valley Farm in Sperryville as a partnership, as sort of a garden partnership. This month, we're starting our planning of the Future Chefs competition for the elementary schools, which will be actually held in March. And we are also having Lucky Tray Days at the elementary school locations, in which random students who eat with us will win prizes throughout the month. From transportation to items, one, our push-to-talk demo radios have been ordered from T-Mobile, and we're just awaiting their delivery. And those will be the ones that we will demo to see how they work on our bus, and then look at purchasing the radios for our fleet. And that our buses that were slated to start, that we purchased, that were slated to start to build in February, is now looking a little bit more like April before they'll be in production, but they are still scheduled. As far as our facilities, with Mr. Levacy, that for staffing, we still have a general HVAC mechanic position available. As you'll recall, we've worked with a grant that deals with a digital mapping of our schools, so that we can use that with our partners in law enforcement and EMS. So our walkthroughs with the company called Thundercats Technology, they have already performed their walkthroughs of the schools. So now they're creating the draft of our critical mapping. So this is actually pretty exciting, simply because it allows our partners and law enforcement and those type of things to have access to our buildings, other than, as far as if we have a critical situation, other than the paper blueprints. And also projects that the LFK renovation construction is underway. Lance was on site on December 26th, and they started the phase 1 demolition. And we're looking at finishing up that phase 1 to be completed in May, this coming May. And it is exciting to see all of this, and it's kind of impressive to see how much space and activity they've done, but it's a whole lot faster to take it out than it is to put it back in. So, but they've already started their demolition phases, and Mr. Levacy and Mr. Helmick with our facilities, along with our Lance partners, they have done a wonderful job. If Mrs. Vaca, our principal out there, has a concern or something that needs changing, they're really good about getting to that. So we did have a few days where they were jackhammering some of the floors in the back, and it did create some sound. It wasn't as bad in the classrooms, but for a day or two it was distracting. But they finished up that. The security entrances at our elementary school, we talked about our card readers and those type of things, and they have been installed and at all our elementary schools. The Blue Ridge Tech Center roof is complete. So it looks nice, and we've had multiple hard rains and those type of things, and we've been fortunate that the building, as Mr. Levacy says, the building is still dry. So that's important. Also, we've talked about our grounds, and we talked about going out for bids and those type of things for our taking over of our grounds, our middle school and elementary, and Mr. Levacy will have our bid openings for the grounds on January 25th at 2 p.m. at the facilities office. Something that has come up with facility-wise is there is a sewer line issue at Warren County High School. It's over on the 600 wing hallway. That's That's, if you go into the cafeteria, it's down that back hallway opposite of where the gym area is. And there's a pipe that's under the slab. It's about 6 feet under. We have used a plumbing device that we just refer to as a snake that will go down into the plumbing pipes itself to find out why some of this is actually backing up. Well, we've discovered that in that 600 hallway, under that slab, 6 feet down, there seems to be a pipe, a sewer line, it's about a 6-inch pipe, that has slightly, we call it a belly out, so it is slightly bowed. So when stuff comes through that area, you know, it kind of pushes back out. So we have had this issue since the early part of this year. So we have run a snake down in to discover this. We are currently using that snake about 2 to 3 times a week, trying to keep that line open, because in order to fix this, there's several ways that we can fix this. One is that we can actually, and we had to do this before at another school a few years back. We literally will have to be able to have that school where we're not having any use of the facility to be able to actually open up into the floor and then go through the slab and then go down 6 feet to fix that and then close all that up. That's quite expensive. Another way, which we're looking at with a contractor, is to insert, for lack of a better word, it's almost like you're inserting a tube down in that belly out section, and they just refer to that as a bladder, okay, a bladder tube. That would be inserted. There's a solution that goes in on this to be able to seal in that particular spot where that bladder would be and where that bowed or bellied out area would be. It would help fill that in to make it a smoother run through that sewer line. That is something that, once again, we would have to do this on a weekend. We'd have to do it at a time where we could have full access to the school, but no one in the building using the facilities. This process would allow us to enter with a snake, with this apparatus to go in, and this is something that this company does. It's not something that I have experience with. But they would go ahead and find a place to enter with the snake, put in this bladder, put in the solution, and to create a section there that we could continuously use and build up that belly part of the pipe. If that does not work, then we would have to be looking at something this summer to go in and actually start to dig up that section of that pipe. Like, as I said, we've been through this before. It happens, but that's the situation that we're currently having there at the school, and that's how we're addressing to fix the problem. So that was my brief update of the 3 areas: facilities, child nutrition, and transportation.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, I know we're entering past hour 2 here. Our last item on the evening, I have the VSBA Code of Conduct on here. Mostly I put this on here over the past year. I know we've had a lot of discussion as a board with VSBA, and we've retained our membership, but we've moved to our own policy services recently. Through the delegate assembly process, we came together as a board and sort of made our statements to the VSBA, what things we were not going to be in favor of, that they were going to plan to lobby. So I thought moving forward, is this something that we as our own board want to look at to do our own code of conduct? Is this something that we need to do at all? Since we're kind of rewriting and doing our own policies and reviewing as we go, is this one of those things that we want to put on that? For the past 3 years, it's been something that has come up each time I've been on the board. I assume it's been every year prior to that, so just
bringing it to the work session as a discussion and time to decide, is this something we want to dig in, do on our own, not do it all?
I would prefer to not doing it all. I think we take an oath of office, and I think that we all get along well and treat each other well, and I know the trend right now is, actually more boards are following with that and are not signing VSBA code of conduct or doing codes of conduct. So I know just this past week, 3 other boards have now rejected the code of conduct as well, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even see it really as rejecting so much as the more I thought about it, and I look at it and think, well, this is all stuff that I would do anyway, so I don't know how necessary it is to have a formal statement.
required,
Right, it's not,
No.
yeah.
we all have taken our oath and.
And I think we work well together as a board and I think we're all right without it.
I don't have a strong opinion one way or the
I
other.
don't either, I think I'm fine without it too.
Okay.
Either way, it's.
And I don't think we'll need this as an action item for February.
It's fine.
Any other business that I'm missing this evening? Okay, could I have a reading into closed session, please?
This motion is made that this open public meeting of the Warren County School Board become a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711. The school board desires to discuss the following matter in a closed meeting. Section 2.2-3711A1. Discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of employees of the school board, specifically an employee personnel issue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Grant, could you do a roll call, please?
Certainly. Dr. Funk?
Aye.
Mrs. Salins?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Dr. Pence?
Aye. Thank you. We're going to take a couple minute break.